welcome, Francis. I'm very grateful that you're participating. We have not met before, but I have been following you on YouTube at least for a year and been very impressed with your way of combining your trading method with your knowledge of history and the current global developments. So with that, I would like to emphasize some of the things that you are involved with for those who are not familiar with your work and involvement in the trading community. I became so inspired by hearing from others in your market sniper community that I just joined recently, and that has been the best thing I've ever done in my time of trading for more than 20 years. I can say that I was welcomed more than anywhere else and helped all along to get started with your extensive educational program. I think your request for your students to go over that in a year's time is not no exaggeration. If you really want to dive into it and accomplish what you have set up, that's what it's going to take. So that's what I started out doing, and that makes me very confident that all the anxieties and uncertainties that I've been going through will be taken out of the picture in my future of trading. So a deep thank you for setting that into motion and make it available.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, and well done for taking the opportunity. You don't get good at things that you aren't prepared to learn a little bit. People tend to just say, just throw me trades. We want you to grow as well.
Yes.
We want you to grow and understand why you're doing something. We want a deeper sense of knowledge, because that's actually where the personal development comes in. What's actually happened is it's a personal development program, which happens to have a trading theme, and just getting the food at the end and not cooking, growing the the ingredients and divining the recipes is a flawed outcome. It's just make me rich. Unfortunately, people that really are successful rich, that are not in nefarious activities, are highly self-actualized people, and that's why I say you've signed up for a personal development program with a trading theme. Of course, it's about building wealth, but wealth starts in the mind. It starts in understanding. It starts in a lot of aspects there. So thank you for having me on, and we're delighted to have you a member, and you're a most gracious individual. And let me know if you want to take on the July 15 and the timing aspects, because I'm ready to answer that or give you my best take on how what we do contributes towards that.
Definitely. I've just been going over the astrological aspects with Sama here. And if you would like to summarize, Sama, what your outlook is on July, we could take it from there with Francis. Just a very brief scope of the astrological perspective regarding the possible event.
So kind of like from a swing trading perspective, I'm looking at both larger astrological aspects and some of the shorter ones that give me a general framework of the trend and of turning points. And so the last one I identified being June 20th, we've kind of already seen that in the market. The markets were kind of bullish into that point. Now we've had a turn, and you see the sentiment. People are quite bearish. What's interesting to me in crypto, like for Bitcoin, for example, is like the RSI is back to October 23 levels. And that kind of mirrors the panic we see, but that also gives room for a run up. There are things that I'm seeing on the long trend, on the long-term trend aspects that still point to the fact that we're still bullish. Yes, the American economy is not in great shape. Yeah, there are things to be bearish about, but there are charts pointing to an increase in the liquidity cycle. And in the short term, I expect the beginning of July to be fairly bullish going into this event. From an astrological perspective, there are things pointed towards that other collaborators or contributors will talk about that were very similar to what I see, but what we were talking about is confluence, because we're using different disciplines to look at the energetics that are behind the charts. I also look at TA as well, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, because that's obviously your zone, But going into this event, I see some short-term bearishness. I don't see it being the end of the bull market, though. I see a continuation, and I see there being more issues end of August and September for markets. In the short term, I do see us continuing higher into this event, though.
And you also mentioned that the event would likely cause a dip, but
Yeah.
like Clif High is mentioning in his presentation that the algorithms are indicating a surge of the markets following the event. Some intervention will be made.
Yeah, once people realize, what I was saying is that once people realize, A, life has to go on, markets will continue higher. And it's very likely that this September, the United States will be put in a position in which Yellen will create some magic tricks. And again, the liquidity charts are pointing into an increase coming from somewhere. And on the short-term level, which I could get into, the banks are in a precarious situation. A lot of what we're looking at is the crisis in sovereign debt. And so they are going to print more, and it's probably going to come from the fiscal side, Yellen side of the equation, and that's probably going to affect markets and election cycles, which is very typical, which I talked about as well before you came on. So
And that was
a lot pointing to the fact that this run is not over, but there will be a response that is short-term bearishness due to this event on the 15th.
Right. And with that summarization, I would leave the word to you, Francis. What is your outlook on the current and upcoming market conditions?
So I respond in two ways. I respond technically, which is what we do. So our credentials has been, the euro Swiss franc collapse in 2009, the peg collapse in 2015, the oil collapse at 67 to single digits, which we also called more recently. And I'll refer again to the energy markets and the oil markets specifically. We're currently seeing, so I have two responses. That's a technical response. I also have a fundamental take ref, the crypto markets, which I'll also give as well, but succinctly. So with regards to oil, there is a coiling up. There is what we call a beginning of an HVF structure. In fact, it's not even the beginning. It's we're probably creating our third impulse of two very well-established ones already. What does that mean? Well, it means marginally lower highs and marginally higher lows are occurring. So that means there's a coiling up, a compression of volatility, which usually eventually relieves itself in a very violent upside or downside break. So for an example, a narrative that would lead to an upside break on oil would be a major escalation in Israel, Lebanon, Ukraine, Russia, for example, and maybe strikes on energy-related depots or supply chains that could see a major surge in oil. So that would be the military strike that's likely to see oil run. That's going to be an inflation narrative as well if oil were to run to the upside. So you would then see a tightening of rates and you're more likely to see even more weakness. That's the one option. The other option is that the technical setting up process which is occurring is a downside break. And in that environment, that would be an already squeezed economy slips into a far deeper collapse, a cascading collapse. And we get first the disinflation, the exact opposite of inflation, the disinflation. Nobody's spending any money. Nobody's booking business trips. There's a collapse in expenditure. There's a jobs start being laid off, etc. And this is more in line with the early period of the COVID 2019. And that's where you would see equity markets that are very boiling hot, coming off and spilling. And I think this is quite a reasonable possibility, although we can't rule out both sides. And commenting the usual proliferation, which would then see the rebound. My feeling, so that's the two technical observations looking at both directions. And some people will say, well, thanks, you haven't narrowed it down both directions. Means you covered both. It's a squeeze, low volatility, and then suddenly violently move in one or the other direction that will be event driven. So it's quite a specific prediction. We just can't say up or down at this point until the third impulse is closer to completing. The fundamental comment is right now on crypto markets. I think that seems to be the gist of the interest here, but I'm sure there's people that are interested in equities and other, is that the crypto market seems to have run out of drivers. in a very, very short time. The bros are hurting. They were told it's a bull market, and they've now sat going sideways since March. It was March that we hit 74K the first time. And in fact, we are compressing there. We've had a lower high. And are we going to make a lower low, or are we going to stay within that range and do what the oil market technically has done? So it's a very, very interesting period. If Bitcoin runs the previous low after the 74, which is just shy of 74, call me a liar, it was 73,800 or whatever it was. If we run the low of that pullback, we're going into the disinflationary argument side of the equation. And I would expect possibly oil also to do something similar, and unless it's a very specifically war. The war is obviously good for oil, but it's not necessarily good for the rest of the economy, because the statists crowd out all their expenditure into military industrial complex. The citizens don't get any infrastructure, they don't get anything, and if you're not in those industries, you're not doing very well. So all the economy gets crowded into one particular area, and everything else suffers. So my feeling is that the ETF run was the 25K Bitcoin all the way up to the 74 run, and that was the Bitcoin ETF. We saw that in dominance. We called for the Bitcoin dominance to break out of the sort of 30 to 40% box that it was in from the previous bull run, and it absolutely did that. It smashed through 55%. So most of this Bitcoin market so far, the main theme has been actually Bitcoin. Yes, there's been Sol that's hyper performed. There's been Ton. There's been one or two others, but actually Bitcoin has been the dominant mover. He will have hoovered up the bulk of the money, and the ETF would have been a large part of that. In short, it's an institutionalized narrative, less about retail. And now that that's played out, and everybody, that wall of money's rushed in, there's not the rollover of continual money coming to the same degree as there was that built up pressure. I mean, we've been hearing about a Bitcoin ETF for 3 or 4 years, waiting for this to happen, 5, 6, maybe more. So I think there's the absence of drivers in Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin went from the 10K to the 64,000, that was after the events of CV19, and when there was big proliferation and 7 trillion was pumped into the economy. And I feel the second half of the Bitcoin bull market certainly needs a new driver, and dollar not being dominant. The other part of the story is dollar has been pretty firm. We need actually dollar weakness. And when there's fear, more money goes into the dollar. So we actually need fear, collapse, and then proliferate, which is then the weakness moment, before we get the super turbo juice for Bitcoin to the next level. So that's a fundamental comment combined with the technical aspect. Watch the oil markets, crypto people, because inflation, disinflation reflects very early on that, and the events are often based around energy that happens with that. Also watch the debt markets, because that signals interest rates up or down. So if we were to see a weakening fundamentally in the US economy, don't forget Euro's cut, the Swiss cut, quite a few nations have cut. But America said no, December sometime maybe. If we were to see further weakness and a cut being pulled forward, that could then bring interest rates down. That will ignite the risk on trade again. That would give gold and silver a bid, and I would imagine Bitcoin would start to trade a bit better as well.
Do you see gold and silver diverge from the previous correlations in this coming period, or will they still be on hold, so to say, in order for the bull run to run out?
So I still anticipate on the medium to longer time frames, we will see approaching the doorstep of 3K for gold in the not too distant future, in the next 9 months or so. However, and gold, I will highlight, showed more maturity than Bitcoin, because during this March period for Bitcoin, where it's been in contagion, a bit of a compression and not really making new ground, gold is actually going up on a strong dollar. So that was occurring. Clearly, China was letting treasuries go and was stacking precious metals. So that shows the perception at the big top central banking level, the desirability of the old solution of real gold, physical gold. So gold actually has done pretty well. It's a 15 trillion as instead of a 1.2 trillion market compared to Bitcoin. So just to have moved as much as it has in price has actually been quite spectacular. It is technically now, though, are we going to spill? Well, I would say there's a head and shoulder structure there. That doesn't always mean it triggers. Sometimes you can get a bit of broadening and then it sorts itself out. It goes low volatility and continues up. But there is a threat if gold is to trade to 150. I don't think it's a great environment for Bitcoin, because typically that would point to dollar strength again, and that would normally be bad for Bitcoin and risk off. So we talk about of the anti-fiats subset and dollar being king fiat. So we actually need some dollar weakness right now. And at the moment, with how things are set up for rates, you're still seeing the dollar being bid.
Right. Given a July event, and without asking you for financial advice for the viewers, how would you position on the precautionary side of such a situation?
So on a non-advisory basis, how would I position going forward? Well, it's a tipping point. My personal assessment is that the retail consumer is wrecked, is in difficulties. And I think the property market in the States, we will be in America attending Rick Rule's event. I think a lot of people, and this is something Chris Vermeulen, just to give credit to somebody else's fundamental point, there were a lot of cheap deals on property taken out when the interest rates were super low during CV19. And a lot of those are on 2 to 3 year deals that are all expiring now. So what you actually have is people haven't been getting the salary increases at the rate of inflation, anyway, close to the last 3 years inflation. And you have an environment where they're going to be coming off their cheap money deals. And as is typical in the States, people buy as much home as they can on their discounted deal. Many of them will not be able to afford the new mortgage payments and may become forced sellers. And the problem is when you have forced sellers, there's a no option there. They can't refi anywhere else and get an affordability. So that 3 year cycle to the lows of the interest rates with the spill, the absolute thriller, the spiller all the way from Manila, as we like to say, that took us down to the blow off top of the bond market in terms of an asset value and the lows of the rates. Those people coming off deal, cheap money, I think we could have downsides. I think we're going to see a worsening of the recession. And that generally means there could be more dollar strength and there could be a lot of risk off for things like crypto that retail's involved in. I want to just say on stocks, retail is involved in stocks, but far less than is usual. BlackRock and institutions are largely involved. So stocks could come off somewhat. They could come off big, but they could also tread water. I fear a little bit for crypto because if you have forced sellers, the retail is not particularly mature and is often over leveraged. They could have quite a down leg. So I fear the downside. I think people need defensive positions, and defensive positions in this kind of environment actually means cash and a couple of shorts to hedge any long-term longs. And I've highlighted in the community, as you're aware, and I don't mind sharing here, something like UPS that's set up in an inverted HVF and a head and shoulder that is a parcel delivery company. If you're getting crushed consumers, you're going to see down. The other thing is if we're going to get a strong dollar, I fear the escalation for the USD Japanese yen. We got a target up to 165. So if you haven't got a USD JPY long trade, that's also a counter hedge for risk off and collapse. So a short on UPS as one example. There are other things, but I won't discuss them here. We discuss them in the community. People can, that's something to work with at least.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. If you would round off with giving us your outlook perspective until the US election, which seems to be a turning point for the markets as well.
It's very difficult to know what's authentic nowadays in terms of commenting on the US election. I mean, I'm sure the Democrats didn't just realize for the first time that they've got a decrepit, half warmed up corpse being rolled out for the debates there. Surely it didn't just occur to them in this single moment. I feel, is this a psyop almost for them to do a rotation into some other candidate last minute. I'll point out that these debates normally happen in and around September, and this time they're happening in June, which leaves quite a bit of extra time. So maybe they shuffle the pack, and it was planned in for someone new to come in and really ignite the pace. So be careful about being too on the front foot if you're a Republican. Personally, I'm not a fan of either party, and I don't believe you get anything that resembles real change through a ballot box. So in terms of the elections, who knows? You're going to get a pantomime show of some form or variety. I would say watch the markets and protect and be defensive and expect and prepare anything. So I'm busy visiting a community member, full solar, growing food, and armed to the hilt, pre-packed food. It sounds a bit extremist, but being over prepared is just a much better thing. So I would focus less on what's likely to come out of the various elections. You're going to get Zionism. You're going to get citizens being bullied by state. You're going to see the continual dominance of the military-industrial complex. You're probably going to see the provocation of Russia if it's a Democrat, or the provocation of China if it's a Republican, in some form or another. And I would not focus on that. It actually gets you down. And I would focus on taking positive action on being well-resourced, the couple of trading shorts. There's nothing like making money in the markets to cheer you up, by the way, and having real method with real money management, stop placement and targets, etc., to do that. And that's where we come in if people want to find out more. And keep your mood up. It's very important, especially if you were to be exposed to new flus of an avian variety or anything, not to be in a state of fear and depression. And these elections and the TV is designed to manage down your immune system. The blue lights of excessive exposure to computers, this has all been engineered in, the frequencies and the hertz, and I'm getting quite esoteric here. I'm aware of it, of watching TV, etc., etc. Cut that garbage out. Look at the forests I've got outside here. And there's a freshwater river that we're going to go swim in, and nature is your best friend. Nature is your best friend. Exercise, activity. I was being a pathetic cha-cha and salsa dancer last night. I've got stiffness in my legs where I didn't have muscles, but I was laughing my head off. Everyone was laughing at me, and I didn't give a monkey's about it. And we had a grand old time, and we had dinner with friends. Socialize with real fellow human beings, preferably as alert as possible. Avoid any of the industrial complex cures, and there's nothing healthier for you than nature, nurture, social relations, making money, and keeping your head at times when others are all losing theirs, and watching and following blow for blow the red versus the blue team in this pantomime that they're putting on for you is not productive for you at a number of levels, and is designed to manage you down. Keep your immune system strong. We're going to win. We're going to be positive. We're going to go. We're going to keep the fight going. We're going to lift people up, and we're going to run the obstacle, whatever obstacle course they put in front of us. But to do that, you need to be strong, healthy, in a good state, financially, fiscally, security-wise, socially, with optionality, which is why I also travel a little bit, get bank accounts in other parts of the world, the whole reset preparation. It's quite a long discussion, and I don't want to yak on for too long. And just on that point, I've just been paying with my Bank of Georgia cards that have dollars, euros, pounds, and any other currency I want, which includes Swiss francs, accepted everywhere. We're in the middle of Panama, and the people I'm staying with have them too. And so they have Panamanian banking, they have European, they have Georgian, and they love it. They're delighted to have it. They switch between the currencies because they're checking the charts. These are all things you can do, and it takes some of the power of localized banking bullying. You can't move that amount, or we're limiting you to this amount of this, and that's going to get worse. It's going to get more, and we need optionality, and that's the best thing. You have options, choices. Then you have then you're less beholden to the government of the moment and the day. Anyway, so I hope my contributions were useful, and to everyone watching, listening. And sorry I'm doing this from the car in the middle of the jungle, but that's kind of how it panned out on the weekend.
we're just so grateful that you made it, Francis, and I want to thank you from my heart for participating, and also asking you to let us know how the viewers can move on to become members of the community from here.
Subscribe on the YouTube channels. That costs you nothing. Have a watch. Decide if you like what we're about. Have a phone call. There's no obligation. There's 14 days. We don't do any hard selling. Only community members. No professional salespeople. And it's got to be willing. A community of the willing. So there's no captured. There's no captured people. Think hard before you make an investment. It is an investment. The difference is we believe there's a return on investment versus a conspicuous consumption purchase. By the way, we're doing tax residency in Georgia. So you can have a corporation in Panama that pays only territorial tax. Well, I do very little business in Panama, so I pay very little tax. And then when I dividend out to myself, I'll be a tax resident in Georgia. A small country, they need to attract, capable, productive people. The only thing I'll pay on is if I own a property on income, these sort of things. And also putting this together, you're really doing God's work by communicating and getting like-minded people together. So congratulations on you for getting a conversation together on a weekend that people can follow and watch.
Thank you so much, Francis, and wish you a pleasant stay onwards in Panama.
Absolutely. It's themarketsniper.com for those that wanted the website, and I'll sign off and drive back down the hill then.
Francis, one thing you said something really important and really key, and you're actually a live example of that, is community. And a lot of what you just said there at the end is only possible because you're actually boots on the ground in that community. And it even ties back to what you said about the screens and how they are destructive. You don't want to get into this loop where you think you're doing something by pushing a like button or watching things. Francis is boots on the ground, his signal's unstable because he's in Panama in a community of like-minded individuals using similar cards with the same mindset of tax avoidance and everything in a location in which they want those people there. And so that has a lot to do with understanding of trends in nature in the sense of, obviously the Western world is headed down. Where are places in the world that are headed up with like-minded individuals? The community piece is so important because you could even take what Francis is saying, but be in your own bubble and make a bunch of cash. Who are you going to exchange with?
Exactly.
In that type of world or scenario. What if you're still stuck in a Western environment where nobody wants your gold bars? They don't know what's in that gold bar. They might think there's cement in it, right? They don't trust you. They don't know you. You have no community to exchange with. So this community piece, particularly, this is astrological, but while Jupiter's in Gemini, between now and the next year of June, while we still have some time before this nuclear escalation gets even worse, you want to be with like-minded individuals like Francis and understanding who can you exchange with. Very key, very important. I love everything you said. And even the hint there with the yen, that is a trade. I'm curious what your target is before you head off, because I'm seeing 220, 250 even possible. So that's an example of a trade there. Just one of many, by being in a community with people who are seeing where the market is headed that can help you and support you.
Right.
And if I can add, that was really great response, by the way. I loved your eloquence on that. That it's almost like social media is a primal scream room for people that are freaked out. And it's a zero productivity thing. It's like a padded cell that I go, oh, you're freaking out. Jump in there, scream, punch the walls, do that, carry on. And you think people are noting. You're hitting likes, you're retweeting, you're angry, and you're going F this and F him and screw him and he should be shot and all of that sort of stuff. The point of boots on the ground that you make is absolutely it. We're traveling, and we've got backup support. And when you're sick, who's picking you up? The community element. So great points there, really great points. Awesome, guys. I'm going to bow out, but thank you very much for including me, and keep up the great work. And it was awesome meeting you.
Same to you, Francis. All the best.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now.